Let's try that again. Hello and welcome to another excellent Cook Along Live. Hope Sunday's working out for everybody. It is working out better for me. I did not have to work all day and then have an hour to get prepped for this. I actually had all morning to get prepped for this, which was fantastic. I cannot tell you how much pressure that lifts off of my shoulders. So hopefully you guys are excited about doing fried chicken and onion rings today. Maybe not the healthiest meal, but it's all fun. We're just gonna enjoy. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our chicken. And if you saw my Instagram story or Facebook story earlier, we put a little bit of seasoning on this, just a little bit of salt to kind of let it soak into the skin. The skin of the chicken should be pretty dry and taut. So we're gonna go ahead and just get this guy carved up. Got a little feather there we'll get rid of. And we've already done a couple of chickens on this show where we've taken these guys, broken them down, but I'll just give you a real quick once over once again. I like to start with the legs, usually the legs and the thighs, and there's this little seam or this little crevice right here. And I just go right up against the breast, the bottom part of the breast, and just kind of cut in like this. And what that's going to do is it's basically going to go into where the thigh bone is. You'll feel the bone going in, and you're just going to cut this all the way back to the back, and then you're just going to cut it straight down on the side here, and you'll actually see the bone is right there, and you can just cut right through that, and the thigh comes right off. Super easy to get that guy off. And then we'll get this other side off as well. Rotate it this way. Same thing, we're just going to kind of come right in along the breast here. I'm using a fillet knife, but you can use any kind of a knife to do this. And I'm just going to kind of cut around like this. And you'll notice that right here, like, you can see kind of where the thigh ends, and if you cut down along that, it really just leads right to where the bone connects, where the socket is. And then as long as you can get in between the two bones, the knife is just going to slide right through. There's just a couple of tendons holding it together. And I'll just cut that like that. Now I like doing that first because now I can actually it's easier for me to rotate the rest of the body if I need to get the breasts off. So I'm going to feel right down the middle here, feel where the breastbone is, and I'm just going to come right alongside the breastbone. And sometimes you actually hit the breastbone, so just kind of see it and slice down. And then the breastbone is going to come down. You're actually going to find the wishbone right here, and you're going to cut right down along the wishbone. And then you're just going to make long, smooth slices as far down as the knife will let you go. Now my knife is super sharp. I just sharpened this guy, so he's going pretty easy. And then once you kind of get down towards, you're going to actually see like the inner part of the chicken, the inner part of the carcass down here, and you're just going to slide the knife kind of along that, again making long cuts. And then if you do that, you should be able to basically just pull the breast right off. Now I'm only going to, it won't take me long, I'm going to get the rest of this off, the rest of the meat off. And if it gets stuck with any skin, just cut. You'll notice here we're leaving very little meat on the actual chicken, left on the chicken. And see now, since I have the legs cut off, I can just kind of rotate him real easy. And then just follow the rest of where the breast is, up like so, underneath, and just kind of remove this in one piece. Nice breast. And we'll do the exact same thing with the other side. We already know where the breastbone is, so we're just going to cut in and follow the wishbone down. Sometimes the wishbone is actually cracked, just kind of a side effect of the processing that they go through when they're sent to the store. So sometimes you'll actually just go right through a little crack in the breastbone, which is fine. It's not going to affect the amount of, it's actually going to help you get a little bit more of the meat off. But don't worry about it. And we're going to do the same thing with this side and just kind of cut it down like so. Rotate and come along the back side like that. So I got 2 breasts, we got the thighs and the drumsticks, and now if you want to take the wings off, you can actually see where the joint is, and you're just going to cut right into the joint, and you can remove the entire wing. And then the same thing on the other side. You can see where the joint is. Just going to cut it right into that little joint and pop the wing off. Now you're left with a carcass that is perfect for making a stock, making any kind of a chicken stew. We're going to leave this for processing. I'm actually going to just move this to the side, and then I will deal with it later. All right. Next thing I like to do, I like to separate the drumstick from the thigh. That's totally your preference. If you want to do that, you can. If you don't want to do that, you want to keep it one piece, go for it. Right where the, again, the little crease is, or like the elbow joint is right where the bones are going to connect. So you're just going to kind of cut straight down. You're going to find the ball and the socket, and you're just going to slide your knife right through that, and you'll get a very nice drumstick and a very nice thigh. I'll do the same thing with the other one. Just cut straight down like this. Now, you didn't have to have a full chicken. If you started this and you already have a chicken that's been processed by a butcher, or maybe you just got breasts, or maybe you just got the thigh meat, that's totally cool. I just wanted to start with a full chicken. If you're cooking for a lot of people, this is actually generally more cost effective because a whole chicken is going to cost less than just the individual parts. And it's not very hard to take this thing apart. It's really not that difficult to break a chicken down. Now, I am also going to do the wings. Same thing. Anywhere that there's a joint, you're going to be able to find where the bones kind of connect. And then if you can find that joint, you can just slide your knife right through it. And then you've got 2 little wings here. I'm actually going to use this for stock later. And I'm not going to use the front part of the wing for this. So here's our flat, if you were doing like Buffalo Wild Wings style wings. Some of that skin off. And then we'll do the same thing with this one. So we've just broken down a chicken, and I've got enough food here for, let's see, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. 6 people if you want to be conservative. Now today I don't have any guests, it's just me, so I'm not going to be doing all of this chicken. I'm actually going to be saving some of it for later, and I'll show you kind of how to do that as well. But here's kind of what you got. You got your two drumsticks, you got your 2 thighs, and you got your 2 breasts and 2 flats for wings. Let me just toss these in the sink with the rest of the carcass that I'm going to use for stock. And what I'm going to do with the breasts is I'm actually going to cut them in half. So I'm actually going to go right about here, and just cut right through, just like that. Now another thing with the breasts, there's this little like piece down at the bottom that kind of separates from the rest of the breast. This is the tenderloin, so you can actually cut that off, and then you can actually have more little pieces of chicken. Again, totally up to you and how you want to do your fried chicken. You'll notice that this breast piece, these 2 pieces here are about the same size as the thighs. So this is kind of getting everything into the same general size. Yeah, Kevin, it totally depends. We're also doing this with onion rings, and if you're pairing this with a bunch of other sides, it just depends. And then we'll do about the same. So I'm kind of eyeballing the thigh here as I'm trying to size out the breast. That's about right. And there we go. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 pieces of chicken. Now what I'm going to do with this is just kind of set it over to the side, like so. And then we're going to start getting our dredging mixture ready and our process for getting it into the oil. If you haven't gotten your oil started yet, put it on like medium, low, medium, and just kind of get it up to about 325 to 350. If you don't have a thermometer and you can't measure your oil, get it to where it's hot but not smoking, and you should be okay. Now oil has a fairly, I'm using canola oil, it has a fairly high smoke point, so it would be pretty hard to get it to actually like really start smoking on you. So if it gets that hot, you know you went way too high. But the only difference, if you don't really get it high enough, if it's not at 325 or it's not at, you know, 325 to 350, it'll just take longer to cook the chicken. So you're not really going to have that big of a detriment. And then if you have it too high, it'll cook the outside. The outside will get brown way too fast, and the chicken itself will still be a little raw. So better to err on the side of being a little bit too cool than too hot. All right. Nice clean hands for this. So we're going to put together our dredging mixture. Now this mixture is awesome. And before we actually do this, if you did not see the Instagram post and you did not already season your chicken, you didn't put any salt on it and put it back in the fridge, go ahead and give it a light dusting of salt right now. The reason that we're doing that is because while the flour mixture that we're going to be putting together is going to have some salt in it, it's not going to be enough to season the chicken. So you're going to bite through your breading, you're going to bite through the crunchy outside, and you're just going to have bland chicken in there. So you want to make sure your chicken is seasoned. You should be able to use a candy thermometer to test the temperature of the oil, yes. So if you get it between 325 and 350, you should be good, and then you can just adjust the heat if you need to kind of try and dial it in. So I'm actually going to flip my chickens around because I got seasoning on the skin, but I did not season the inside after I butchered it. So I'm actually going to add a little bit more seasoning to the insides, a little bit more salt, just to make sure that it's well seasoned. Now I've got my chicken on this hand. I just flipped chicken around, so I'm not going to touch anything else with my left hand. I'm just going to get a little bit of a little dusting of salt. I know you guys can't see this over here. It's behind the chat window, but all I'm doing is putting a light seasoning of salt on the chicken over here. I already got plenty on the drumsticks, so I think I'm just going to leave them. They're probably fine. All right, so we should have 6-ish cups of flour here. To this, we're going to add our salt, which I believe was 5 tablespoons of salt. We're going to add our garlic powder, our onion powder, our black pepper, and our cayenne. Now, if you have dried thyme, you can also add some dried thyme to this. It'll add just a little bit of a fresh kind of, thymy flavor to it. And that is not a bad thing. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't do that. I like just kind of leaving this a little bit more basic for me, but totally up to you. I'm just going to use a whisk to make sure that this is well combined. Whisks work really well. A fork would work excellent if you don't have a whisk. Whisks just are so nice. There we go. That's our dredging mixture. So essentially what we're going to do, I'm going to set this over, let's see, I'll put this right there. Put this right here. I'll put the buttermilk right there. So this is going to be my dusting plate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the breast. I'm going to set it on the plate, and I know you can just dump it in the flour and mix it up, and that's super easy. However, what if you want to maybe save this flour if we don't use all of it? Maybe you only have a couple of breasts and you just mix this huge thing of flour and seasoning. If we keep it off of, or we keep the chicken out of here and we just dust on this plate, we can use the plate to contain what we're doing with the chicken, and we can leave this kind of sterile, if you will, and then we can just save it for later. And you already have like a shake and bake mixture for your chicken. You can also, my stepmom actually said that what they used to do is they'd have a plastic Ziploc, and they'd put this in the Ziploc and then just shake it. And I might actually show you how to do that, because that actually works really well. And it takes a small amount of flour. The trick to using a Ziploc is, you'll notice I'm using my right hand only to do all of this, and my mouth. The trick with the Ziploc is you want to make sure that there is still air in it when you're shaking everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, let's see, I'll just grab a tablespoon. I'll put in a couple of tablespoons of this mixture. maybe 4 tablespoons. Leave the spoon in there. I'm going to take this breast, just set it in here. Now I'm going to make sure that I close the bag and leave plenty of air in there. Now I'm going to actually grab a paper towel so I can grab it with both hands. And then I'll reuse the towel. And see, now I'm using a lot less flour, but I can cover the chicken with flour in the bag. Set the paper towel over there. Now I can go in here with my chickeny hand. You want to dust off as much of this layer of flour as you can. So that's another reason for the plate. Just set that there. I'm going to put you over there for now. I'm going to hold the chicken up, and that little tender's kind of coming off, so I'm just going to let it come off. I'm just going to flick it like this to get all of the extra flour off, all the excess flour. And I missed a little bit here on the back, so now I can just kind of dab it on the plate. That was actually where that tender was. And so I'm just getting a nice light coating of flour on this chicken piece. Flour and seasoning, everything that we have in there. Now what we're going to do with this is we're going to dunk it into our buttermilk. We're just going to make sure that it's totally coated. And we're going to put that back on the plate. Same thing with our little nubbin here. And then we can put it right back into the bag. And now what we're doing is we're containing the contaminated, I guess is the word that I'm going to use, the contaminated flour mixture to just the bag. And anything that's left over in the bowl, I can reuse in future fried chickens. There we go. Give that a good coating. Now I'm going to take these guys out and put them directly into my fryer. If you're not using a fryer like what I'm using, and you just have a pot, for example, you can just put your chicken right into the pot. I am going to kind of shake a little bit of the excess off, but what I'm also going to do is press the flour in. And just make sure that there isn't any, wet buttermilk showing. Just make sure that it's all flour. And then again, if you're not using a fryer like this, go right ahead and put your chicken directly into your oil. Be very, very careful. Very careful. Etienne, you can totally wash these and reuse them, and that's what I do. And after that, I'm going to also do the same thing with my drumstick here. Put it in. If you get the freezer Ziploc bags, you can 100% wash and reuse them. And they're dishwasher safe. So there is my drumstick. We'll tap off the extra flour into the buttermilk. Give it a roll. Back into the bag. Do that. That works. There we go. Go ahead and press that flour in. And put you in, and we will get into the oil. Hey Siri, set a timer for 15 minutes.
Starting now.
So once we've got this in the oil, we want to give it a gentle shake. And the reason we want to shake it is because this is going to start crisping up on the outside. If you're not shaking it, it's going to actually stick to the bottom of the basket. Or if you're doing this in a pan, just insert like a slotted spoon and just make sure that you're moving them away from the bottom, because they'll actually stick to the bottom, and then that's when you'll pull them out. And then when you take them off of this or out of the pan, you'll get that crust left over on the bottom, and then you have like a side of the chicken that has nothing on it. So little trick is once you kind of get them in there, shake them around a bit. And if they're not releasing, like that back one doesn't seem like he wants to let go, you want to get them kind of moving right here at the beginning. We'll just get you popped up like so. And we're good. If you have a pot or a pan that's only 2 inches deep and it doesn't cover the chicken, you're going to be rotating these every 5 minutes. Let it do its bubbly thing for 5 minutes. Use something to flip it over. 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. It'll go for 20 minutes instead of 15, or until it's brown to your liking. So let me get that going. I am going to switch over to my sink cam and wash my goobery hand off now. And while we're waiting for the chicken to fry, I'm going to go ahead and get started on my onion rings. Fried chicken is actually super simple to make. It just seems very intimidating because you're working with hot oil. And if you don't have a fryer, dealing with the temperature differences, dealing with getting the oil to the right temperature seems really daunting. Temperature of the oil isn't, you don't have, it's really just like the chicken is. It depends on a lot of factors, but you have a pretty wide range there. So if you're worried about that, don't be. Give it a try. If you don't cook the chicken all the way through, like if you finish here and you put it in, or you take it out of the oil and you let it rest for a couple of minutes and you slice through it and it's still kind of raw in the middle, you can always toss it in the oven. The breading on the outside actually shouldn't be that affected by that. We're back. I'm going to give this another little jiggle just to make sure that they're not stuck, and they're not, so I'm cool. Now I'm going to move my bag here over to the side while we get started on our onion rings. Now, generally speaking, what I would do is I would get all of my chicken cooked first, then I would move on to the onion rings. Since it's just me, I'm going to say that, this is the chicken that I'm going to eat, and these are the onion rings that I'm going to eat. And then we will move into that. So I'm going to get that out of the way. I'm going to use the same dredging plate for my onion rings as I did with my chicken, because any chicken bacteria that's on this is going to get fried with the onion rings. So I'm not super concerned with if I get any on the onion rings. It's not going to affect, you're not going to get sick from this because you're cooking it. It's the same process as what you're doing here. Now, we've done a lot of cutting onions and we've done a lot of dicing onions, and I absolutely cannot stand it when people cut an onion straight down the middle like this. It drives me nuts because then it's very, very hard to dice the onion after the fact. Well, this is the one time, unless you're making like burgers or something where you want onion rings on the burger, that I actually will recommend cutting the onion right down the middle because you want rings, right? However, what I'm going to say is start from this side and cut backwards. Don't cut right down. Say, let's cut it off. This isn't going to make very good rings, but the next bit will. We've got some pretty good sized rings in here that we can work with. And then when I'm done cutting this up, I actually now have a flat surface that I can now cut my onion in half so that I can dice this onion better with. Now, if you cut it right in the middle, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have two halves that are going to be just really going to work with dicing. So just start with one end and then just kind of work your way back carefully. All right, Kevin, is anybody else experiencing interruptions with the video? And yes, I 100% use the fabric towels. I do use paper towels for certain things. Like if I'm cleaning up an oil spill, or like I've got a puddle of oil, I'll use paper towels to sop that up, and then I'll put that in something to toss it. There's not really much you can do around that. All right, so it's something on my end. I'm not 100% sure what the deal is. Give me a second. So Comcast has been giving me some issues lately, and that might be what the problem is. Every so often my connection's been kind of dropping. So it's very, very